got another fantastic day, summer's day in Finland. Just this really incredible deep blue sky. And then of course you've got the dark green of the pine trees. Absolutely amazing. But I'm not here to talk about that. So what I am here to talk about is to make a cultural observation. This from a 59-year-old Brit who's been living in Finland now, this time around, for 3.5 years. I lived in Finland previously between 2004 and 2006, teaching IB economics in Oulu Liceo Lukio. So the house that we're currently living in is quite tall. It's 2 stories, but because of the roof is pitched at quite an angle, it was going to be a difficult job, especially for somebody like me. You know, I'm 6'2" and I'm not that flexible. You know, I'm 59. That's my excuse and I'm sticking to it. So for reasons of safety, my safety, my wife and I, we decided that we were going to get professional painters in to do that bit of the job. So today they arrived. So these 3 young, tall, slim and incredibly good looking women, they jump out of their van and knock on the door. One was blonde, the other 2 weren't. It was like Bananarama coming round to paint your house, except that comparison will be a bit harsh on these 3 women. Now I know I've got some Finnish subscribers who watch my videos, and to them, tervetuloa, but you know, they'll be thinking like, yeah, like, so what? But that type of situation is very, very, well, it's not just unusual, it just doesn't happen in Britain. And obviously, you know, for a Brit, this is one of the interesting things, is that when people move to another country, they don't just move their bodies there, they move their minds there too. They bring their experiences and memories with them too, from their home country. And this is an issue because countries have got different cultures. Britain's culture is very, very different from Finland's, you know, particularly with regard to gender roles in society. So in England, you might have the odd woman who goes into painting and decorating, but they won't look like these 3 young Finnish women. They might look a bit butch, a bit heavy, you know, few piercings, kind of, you know, probably lesbians, if I'm being honest. And I am sorry if that's upset anybody, and I do realise it's a generalisation, but you don't get many, in Britain, you don't get many female painters and decorators that look like supermodels. It's just a fact. So why is that? I think there's 2 possible explanations. So some of it, I'm sure, is partially genetic. So Finns tend to be quite tall and have got long limbs, which must be because, you know, in the winter time for 6 months, they've got to like navigate 2 meters of snow. So you like need long legs to get about. But I think seriously, another big issue is just the harsh external climate. So basically, Finnish climate is selected for, you know, you've got to be a pretty good specimen to pass on your genes. So obviously that tough external environment no longer exists anymore, you know, because we've had a welfare state in Finland for the best part of 100 years. So what we're left with is this second factor, which is cultural differences. So what is culture? So I'd say that culture is society's unwritten rules and expectations that most people conform to. So obviously gender roles are an important aspect of any country's culture, and there are huge differences between Finnish culture and British culture in that regard. And this morning, when my son came down for his breakfast, these girls, they arrived about 8 o'clock in the morning to start work, and so I started to, you know, to get my son's feedback on this, because basically I was expressing kind of shock and surprise that these 3 glamorous young women came to do a job like painting. But as I've kind of intimated before, for me this says more about me than it does about them. It says more about the culture and expectations that I've brought with me from England to Finland. So one thing that we talked about, me and my son, was that in Britain there's still an awful lot of snobbery attached to qualifications, where you went to university, what job you do, whether you drive a brand new BMW or a 5-year-old one. And these things really are not on the radar of the typical Finn, especially the Finn that lives outside of the Helsinki region. They're just not into that at all. Now, I said to my son that I find that quite liberating. That people don't have the same weight of expectation and keeping up with the Joneses factor that exists in England. You know, turning specifically to men and women, in Britain, I think that there's still this sort of culture of women have to be kind of like feminine, in the sense that, you know, they have to conform to particular roles and stereotypes, being girly, wearing certain types of clothes that kind of emphasize their sexuality. So as I've said to you before, you know, in Finland, the women will often refer to the Brits as the biggest girls in Europe who wear the smallest clothes. So Finnish women, they don't tend to wear those kind of, I don't know what you would call it. Let's cut to the chase. Tarty kind of like clothes. That's not to say that they're not stylish and feminine, because they are. And I dare say I'm bound to see, you know, one I don't know, maybe all three of these women who were doing the painting, maybe at the Iskelmar music festival, dressed in their summer dress on the weekend. But you know, you can imagine in England, you know, if one of these girls said, you know, so they were asked like what job that they did, and they said that they were a painter and decorator. Most Brits would find that weird. Indeed, shame on me. I found it weird. But again, what I recognise is that the problem is with me. And, you know, the first step to kind of like solving problems is to at least recognise that there is a problem. And this kind of like girly stereotype that most British women feel inclined to live up towards, it kind of limits them. You know, my son said this morning that you know, he thinks it's great that these girls can, you know, they want to do painting and decorating. They want to run their own business. Fantastic. How liberating for them, without these kind of like judging stares that would go on in England. You know, particularly in the southeast, where I used to live around Guildford. You know, the last job that I worked at was at a girls' school, and you know, the girls dressed themselves as, when there was these summer balls and that, you know, they would invite boys from the boys' school. You know, because that's another issue as well, isn't it? You know, separate sex education. I don't think that that's great for male-female relationships. You know, because when the opposite sex encounters each other, they tend to go kind of haywire, because that's not normal for them, when in fact it should be. So these girls, you know, they would turn up for the ball with like everything hanging out, you know, and it's not good, not what I would call, not, you know, these girls that were doing the painting, they don't dress like that. They dress more stylishly. So these three girls, when they were doing the painting, because they were painting quite high up, they kind of were assembling scaffolding by themselves, you know, and this scaffolding was pretty heavy, but they were just no problem at all. And they were also nimble and agile. You know, for me, that would have been a massive problem trying to paint that myself, you know, climbing up the scaffolding, jumping from one bit of scaffolding to the next, you know, pretty hard athletic work. But, you know, again, this is the thing. In Finland, Finnish women, they don't demand that men help them. In fact, you know, in some cases, it's like, you know, a matter of pride for a Finnish woman to do all of these things themselves, that they're capable of doing what a man is capable of doing, or more than, in the case of me. And, You know, it's not like in England where they talk a good game, but when push comes to shove, you know, they'll do the pathetic dying female act and ask and enlist help. So the Finnish women, they walk the talk, and I think that that's great. They deserve respect. Now, another thing that my son mentioned over the breakfast table when we were talking about these three young ladies coming to do the painting is that in England there are many women who quite like the idea of being like a trophy wife, something that's pathetic, that needs to be looked after. And we both agreed that from our perspective that wasn't particularly attractive as an attractive proposition for a bloke. You know, it's not. I wouldn't want to enter into a partnership with somebody that was kind of meek, passive, you know, who couldn't do these physical things, who wanted, you know, who wanted to play the princess role and for me to do all the heavy lifting. So I know I'm going to get flack for this post, this video. And yes, I know that I'm generalizing. But I think that there's more than a grain of truth in these stereotypes, these cultural differences that I'm relating to you. And trust me on this, these cultural differences are absolutely monumental. So in the comment section underneath the video, it'd be very interesting if I've got any Finnish female subscribers who've lived abroad, maybe in Britain, because I'm sure they've got some quite interesting stories to tell about cultural differences that they experienced when they were living in Britain, living and working in Britain. I'm sure it would have been equally a shock for them to experience what they experienced as it is for me experience what I've just recalled to you. And the final thing that I'll say is that this isn't the first time I've experienced something like this. Last year we had a big job that needed to be doing that required an electrician. So this kind of 6-foot blonde supermodel turns up who's a self-employed electrician. Absolutely delightful person and extremely competent. So I think the final thing for me to say is that I'm learning to get my head around this new situation for me, and I'm not bringing my I've not brought my English cultural baggage with me, or if I did, I'm quickly ditching it. And you know, I made these girls coffee, but I didn't cramp their style or anything like that. You know, what I did like from them is that when I talked to them, the conversation was exclusively in Finnish. We didn't switch into English, which was great. And I guess the final thing is for me to realise, like, that's why not, you know. And I don't have a daughter, but if I did, you know, I think we would have come to live permanently in Finland a lot sooner than we did, because I think this, you know, for a young girl growing up, there's far more opportunities for women in Finland to excel and to use their natural talents to the fullest than there is in Britain, where you've just got this kind of culture that isn't positive, I don't believe. So that's all I want to say today, so God bless.